All right. No, I don't let me hold us up for that. If it
All
doesn't
right.
pop up in a minute, I'll
So,
just
good
close it.
afternoon. Welcome to Success Paradigms. My name is Emilio Garcia, and with me is Andrew Barker, my co-host, as always. And today we got the
Howdy.
privilege of having Steve Schlichting, or Slick, as he said it, and his business is SlickTax or Schlichting Group. So I know we talked about this for a second, but I'm sorry, we're going to go back to that. We were talking about no one pronouncing the name, and I probably butchered it a little bit. But we were talking about the where it came from, and
Well, the
Steve was telling me
etymology.
the story. So tell us a little bit more about that. That's more interesting than Barker.
Well,
I gotta
Schlichting
admit,
is a historical trade name, and I really didn't start researching it until my dad passed. And it's a trade name, kind of like blacksmith back in the old days, but it's a feudal name. And back in the 1300s, if there was a disagreement between town people, the feudal mayor would call out a Schlichting, and they would come out and arbitrate and negotiate a reasonable solution. And that was his job. And here we are almost 2,000 years later, and I'm helping people do the same thing, but it's with the IRS.
Yeah, I was going to say, hey, you can help us do something like that because we get some of those.
Hey, we've been helping train wrecks since 1990, trying to get them back on the path when the wheels come off and when adversity strikes their business, and try to help them put new best practices into place and help them guide them into getting reset, restarted, and back up on a path of success.
Very cool. So let's get started. Let's go back a little bit. You originally from Texas, or where are you
Born
from?
and
Or
raised. I was born and raised in Midland, Texas.
okay,
And what's funny is that's how we kind of got in the business. Is what's funny is I started out in with working with my dad probably about when I was 3 or 4. My grandfather bought a business in West Texas in '53, and my dad pretty much took it over uh, in a leverage deal. But mom got tired of me, and being a West Texas kid full of energy bouncing off the wall, she said, "Just you're going to go to work with your dad," and he had work to do, so he put me out on the bottling line, and I could take 6 1-gallon plastic bottles, put them in a crate, and run them through the bottling line, and they paid me a penny a crate. And if I'd had a really good day, I could make $20. So, for a 5, 6-year-old kid, I started putting the money away for school and other things, but it also gave me walking around money and kind of helped me get kind of entrepreneurial. And then by the time I was 8, I could get one of the big 45-gallon bottles, the 43-pound 5-gallon bottles on my shoulder, and get back and forth. And so at that point, my value became getting on with the truck drivers and as a swamper and helping them with heavy routes or busy routes or routes out to the refineries in the middle of nowhere. And we were very blessed that in the mid 80s, a company came in out of California and, said, "Hey, we want this." They were publicly traded. They want the revenue so they could increase their leverage. And the CPA came to dad, and dad goes, "Man, they call me every week giving us an option, trying to buy the company." And he goes, "Yeah, well, sometimes you just need to listen, because if the price is right, don't be afraid to sell." And we were blessed because we were able to miss the bust in the oil field out there. That's how we really got started in this business, is because my dad was age 55, trying to figure out what he wanted to do. And at that point, he had friends and family that and people from the church, and that the IRS, the FDIC, and the RTC would be coming in and saying, "Hey, we understand it's a bust." People forget that when the bust hit in Midland, if you were bought a house or car, you would be paying 18, 19% interest at those interest rates in those late 80s. And then on top of that, the First National Bank of Midland at the time was the 5th largest bank in the nation. And when it collapsed, it also had done these kind of like a credit default swap. They had fractionalized these oil wells and sold them these S&Ls. So that way you can marginalize a dry hole, but they were never set up for oil to go down to $14 or $13 a barrel
Is
when
there
it takes
anything SNL's
that much
known
money
by?
to just dig it out of the ground.
So what's a
Do what?
swamper? Did you say you worked as a
A
swamper?
swamper?
What's a swamper?
Yeah, swamper is kind of like a secondary guy who rides on the truck and helps the delivery guys. So, like if we did a residential route, I could ride on the sideboard, and somebody would have their empties out on the porch, and I could grab a couple bottles, throw them on the porch. He's doing the books. He drops it in first, and by the time I get the empties, he's getting into second, and I jump on the sideboard. And so we could cover really twice as many houses. Or, for example, we had a downtown route that I worked with a guy named Andy Sweeney, and we did 500 bottles. He had a mag liner that would fold down, and we could put 16 crates on it with some bungees, roll it into elevators, and deliver water to the offices. And we did 500 bottles before noon on one of the biggest days of the year, and we ended up about 800 for the day. But then, like I said, I'd get a call to go out to the refinery out in Marathon or Rankin or Iran, on a Saturday that the refinery ran out, and they nobody wanted to go. You couldn't get any of the guys to go out there on bust their Saturday, and they're like, Steve, want to make $100? Here's the keys, and go out, get the forklift, put 8 pallets on the truck, spend half
That's
the day
great.
going out to the refinery, unload the truck for an hour or two, and then haul butt back home. So, and that was the business I thought I was going to grow up in, was the bottled water industry. And what's funny is, like I said, Dad ended up selling that, and the bust hit, and Dad got involved with some other CPAs and attorneys and EAs that to try to help people out, and because especially in those days, and even these days, the IRS, when they come knocking on the door, they really don't tell you what your options are, and they really don't care to try to help you find a solution. They're there to collect. And so and one of the difficulties with a lot of small businessmen, y'all run into it all the time. Small business guys are very challenged in their books, and they run on that. Do we have enough money in the bank to pay payroll, and let alone any projections or anything else? And the bad habit is they tend to promise the IRS and there's these guys something that they can't achieve. And Dad really said, hey, if I can get involved, you focus on running your business. I'll help clean up the books and be able to present something that's legitimate and reasonable, and try to figure out a way for you to get this thing taken care of. Because the small business guy, if they quit listening to the phone ring and just focused on their books, well, then they're out of business already. And so the easiest way is to earn out of it if you can. And there's always different options out there. And Dad spent 3 years working with these CPAs and attorneys before he got his enrolled agent's license, which is a license from the Treasury Department to represent people before the IRS. And then at that point, he hung a shingle out and says, I don't know if there's an industry out here, but I know there's a lot of people now, and so I'm going to give it a shot. And once you get on this side of the curtain, it becomes much more apparent. And then you start looking at the numbers where, 1 out of 6 people in the U.S. is at least 3 years behind in filing their tax returns. And that's 30 to 45 million people are at a minimum 3 years behind in filing their tax return.
And that's pre-COVID, right?
That number hasn't changed in 30 years.
30 years. Whoa.
Wow.
It's been consistently been that way.
It might change with COVID. I think I agree with Andrew. It might spike a little bit higher this year.
It might actually get worse because we're seeing the procrastinators are procrastinating even more. And the hard part in solutions is it's better to file an O than not file or file late. Because if you file late, you never get the opportunity to dump it off in a bankruptcy, because the current position of the circuit court is that a late filed return or a non-filed return doesn't count as a filed return for bankruptcy purposes. So that's something, even if you're going to owe, it's better to file the return and find a way to mitigate it going forward, because at least you start the clock running. Because under most circumstances, when you file a return and there's a balance due, it starts a 10-year statute. IRS has 10 years to collect it. If they don't collect it in 10 years, it goes away. And what's crazy is I've got clients, and there's people out there that are just, because of the current state of the IRS is leaving millions of dollars on the table, and when the statute blows, they don't really have any recourse, which is interesting because with an offer and compromise, which a lot of people advertise as the brass ring, there's a 5-year contingent that the taxpayer must file and pay taxes in full on time for the next 5 years, or it all comes undone and they have to owe that balance again. And the IRS Purple Book last year was saying that anyone since 2012, which they've tracked, that had a major collection issue, what percentage has stayed compliant in filing and paying on time for that next 5 years? And only 48% of the people were able to maintain that. So about half the people that get those will default them, and it'll all come back, which is a lot of work and frustration that comes back.
Yeah, isn't it? I mean, it sounds to me, I mean, okay, granted, the government, the IRS is getting some money of those 48%, do I have the numbers right, 48%? But it's still rather inefficient, isn't it?
Here's the interesting thing, because the backbone of the IRS, the individual master file and the business master file, is written in COBOL. It's a computer language that hasn't been taught in 30 to 40 years. And
oh no, I read about it.
yeah,
myself.
we know remember, COBOL and Fortran and all that other fun stuff. But until they can update that, because also with their current report, IRS is running 63 different systems that don't talk to each other. And so that tends to compartmentalize. And so you might talk to one person that has access to a third of those, and another department that has access to the other third or half. But it really makes it problematic to be able to put everything together. And that's one of the things that we've run in. And especially with COVID, the IRS basically shut down March. They were supposed to come back on board July 15th. And because of the extended COVID, I talked to a revenue officer a couple weeks back. She was trying to get her correspondence from Midway and Alpha. And she was saying that she called her manager to go get the mail, and they go, nope, we've got 4 people that are allowed in that building to get the mail, and that's it. And other than that, there's nobody else in that building. And there's been some articles related that some of the big processing areas are 20 to 30 million pieces of correspondence behind. And so they've actually held off sending off new correspondence because until they can work out that backlog, the majority of the things that they'd be sending out will be inaccurate until they work through that backlog. So it's a mess. I'll say that.
Yeah.
And it makes it challenging for us because, no, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go
ahead.
No, I was going to say that doesn't surprise me, but I think it goes more into, I've heard a lot lately about the emergency loan, emergency disaster, and then the PPP. And
right.
I've heard a few different people saying there's a rumor that the PPP, if it's less than 150 grand, it's just going to be wiped out. They're just going to forgive it and say it's too much. We can't handle it.
It's an ever-evolving compliance nightmare. Because at first the PPP, because those were delegated out to individual banks. Mm-hmm. And if you helped anybody with those or tried to participate, all the big guys, no one participated very well. Bank of America, Wells Fargo, any major banks said hands off because there was so little compliance on the front end that they were really concerned with Frank Dodd and everything else, that you ended up going to these little banks because the little banks got paid to do these deals. The amount of fraud that's there was there, but with the PPP, there are some different processes out there, and it depends on how much was taken out, but you've got an 8-week stretch or a 24-week stretch, and it's a 2 or 3 pager to help document here's where the funds went. And that's going to be pretty straightforward. Like I said, it's ever evolving. The EIDL interesting because under 50K, it's completely unsecured. If it's over up to 150K, personally secured, or no, your business secured to your business. And then if it's over that, then it's business and personal securitized.
Yeah, because I've been trying to file my documents for the forgiveness, and the bank keeps saying, well, we're really close to getting the forms ready. We're not there yet.
Well,
I'm like, "You okay?"
you mean for the PPP?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an easy 3205. If you look at that, I pulled those off a while back and looked over it. Like I said, I think it's a 2, 3, 4 pager.
Yeah,
But,
they said it was going to be
like I
really
said,
simple. I mean,
yeah, it's currently
mine
evolving.
was not big and
Right.
easy documenting.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, that's one of the nice things. I use ADP, so we'll pull 941s. Here's the 941s. Here's the rent, and here's the utilities. And it's straightforward. It fits in the window. Everything should be fine. That's the crazy thing about the EIDL is PPP is very narrow in scope. Payroll, rent, utilities, and the EIDL, you can use it for just about anything.
Mm-hmm.
And with that one, that ends up being a 30-year note at 3.75%. There was an advance. They're talking about that was supposed to be forgivable. It's an ever-evolving situation. It's kind of like Obamacare. All
It's
these
not that.
years.
It's not that complicated.
Well, no, it's not that complicated, but it's evolving. Obamacare never really got a firm foundation of the rules, and so you could get, if you wanted to, every 30 days you can take new CLE or CE or CPE that said there's a different way of doing it, and 30 days later it'd be changed. And that's one of the things I just kind of got out of the way from. I go, until these are finalized, I don't have the time to sit there and, wasting away 2 or 3 hours every month or so to just throw away,
Yeah. Well, once they decide, because I also have an EIDL, so hey, if I can get out of that one, I mean, if not, 30 years is good. I mean, business sustained, that
well,
everything's good. So
it's cheap money, and that's where I've had a few people say, well, I don't know if I need it. And I go, it's inexpensive leverage right now. And we don't know where COVID's going to be. And, you stick it in a 5% market, stick it in, and peel a little off as you need it, or, any number of different things.
I almost
it's just kind of nice having
round
the
2.
first gas in the tank.
Yeah. I almost wish they came out with a round 2.
So,
well, they're still doing EIDLs through SBA.gov.
Yeah, I already have one.
Okay. All right.
I already took one. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
And they're talking about a round 2 to some extent on all of that, but there's so much now with the Ruth Bader Ginsburg and her passing and trying to get the Supreme Court and an election and trying to get some stimulus through. It's a toss. Every day is a guess of wonderment if anything's going to happen out of Washington, other than just flared up people, triggered people.
All right. So we kind of went from
We
beginning to almost the whole thing without any interaction, but let's talk a little bit more about you. What are your hobbies? What is it that you like to do when you're not reading changes in PPP law?
Well, this has been my life for pretty much the last 6 years since my dad passed. One of the interesting things is, for a lot of years, I had looked around for an advertising piece, which happened to be a fire truck. And so after looking around for about 6 years, I found a 1936 Federal Diamond Tree fire truck. And so to take that out to a car show or do a Veterans Day or July 4th, it's a nice advertising piece. and it gets a lot of attention, and that's part of the fun. Me and Andrew were talking about, neither of us has taken a trip in 5 or 6 years, and we're like, yeah, we just need to get a guy's trip to go out and let off some steam and get past this COVID thing. But primarily it's work. I network, and I've got another. I get different things that come at me all the time, and so I've got a little oil and gas project that I'm working on, and that's moving in the right direction, and it's a great time for that. And
your hobby for work is more work.
Yeah, I was
Your
going to
break from work is more work.
Work is a hobby. Work is life, and life is work. And I've always, I had friends that used to play EverQuest and all those video games that just suck days out of them. And I go, I'll play some Tetris or one of these little quick games. But if you're wasting 2 or 3 days playing video games, and you're losing the ability to make money or learn something or do something to make a difference,
Yeah, I see people playing like those crazy games. Like, obviously, I have a teenager, so Andrew, you can vouch for that one.
Well,
Yeah, same
But
here.
in this day and age, there's people that are paying them good money. I mean, they're making these video game centers, since they don't expect anybody to be playing real sports in the future.
Not in this country.
They're too lazy to play real sports, so they're going to have to play video games. And but some of these kids can make, $100K, a couple $100K, $1 million here and there, and it's just kind of mind blowing. A few years back, before Facebook, but when Craigslist was still big, there was a kid he was working for Microsoft as a game tester, and he's like, I need to live near the bus station because I don't quite have a car. And I was going, okay, here's a good safe room. His folks would be fine with it. And he's like, no, they're paying me $60K this summer to be a game tester. And I'm like, go get an apartment with a pool view, have a good time.
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
That much?
Crazy.
Get a real place.
Well, absolutely. And I was thinking he was 16 or 17. He's like 15. And I'm going, yeah, this is okay. If you were on a tight budget, this is a great place to study and learn. I've got trees and fire pits and all that other stuff. But no, go get yourself a nice pool with a view and a nice apartment, and enjoy your summer. Get your internship, and save your money for college and buying a decent used car down the road.
Well, yeah, used or a new one, not too expensive, but I mean, at 15,
I don't know.
he couldn't get it at 15, I guess. I don't know. I don't know, man. My son is 15, and he keeps talking about making money. He's started a couple of online stores.
That's awesome.
Yeah, well, yeah, he starts them and then shuts them down.
Really an interesting deal. So he's doing affiliate marketing?
He did a couple of drop ship. So
right.
Not affiliate. So where I thought he was going to take off a little bit more is he was starting to get to mostly my friends and say, hey, I see your company logo. I'll design a line of hats and shirts and whatnot. And you can buy one by one. So right. He was starting to get into that, but then soccer and school, and then the whole COVID thing is like,
yeah,
went by the wayside. But,
well, hey, it's great that he's got an entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah,
yeah. His problem, I think, was that, as you know, when it's an entrepreneurial side, you start slow and make a little bit of money. His problem is he actually filmed 2 TV commercials and 2 print ads, got like 6 or 7 grand in a week. I'm like, okay, here it goes. He's not going to go for something that's going to pay him $3.
Well, you got to hit a lot of singles and doubles before you get the home runs. And, if you always try to hit home runs, you might lose the opportunity to come to the plate. So,
and I think that's what's starting to happen is he hit that home run, but he hasn't
Right.
been to the plate anymore. So now he's like, okay, what can I do where I can make $5, $10, $20, whatever it is, and get a little bit
Absolutely.
more into that. So we'll see.
Absolutely. I was notorious for that growing up myself, because I'd sell stuff door to door. Because for scouts, I'd sell 100-pound bags of fertilizer door to door, seeds. Then for the band, it was turkeys, and then during school, I get, especially right before Halloween, I get the big giant kegs of bubble gum, the single wrapped ones, and so I'd always take a little bag to school every day, and I'd sell it 10 cents a piece or 3 pieces for a quarter, and have
Okay.
just enough to make out the day. But that usually kept me in, $3 to $5 a day, walking around money if I wanted to buy a soda or. But it was a decent little gig that because I knew my cost in that was about half a cent a piece. So even at 10 cents, I was making 20 times the money.
20 times, yeah. Hey, not a bad margin.
No, and it's stuff that a lot of our kids, they just need to. What do they like to do? Get out and do it, and that's where even, because when I came out of college, of course, we all did, wait some tables, do some retail, try to get out of that pretty quick, and then bounced in the bars, and then I got into the mortgage refi boom, right when it hit in the right about 1990, and it was crazy. And so I worked for a mortgage company during the weekday, and then I worked for a home builder in the evenings and on the weekends, and then I was a bouncer or DJ for the clubs on the weekend. So I never slept at that point, pretty much.
So the club pay you for just one or the other, or they paid you for both?
Depends on what I did,
You
because I
show up
spent
and
about
bounce until it was your time to spin, and then when you're done spinning, you go back to bouncing?
Oh, no, because once I made that conversion, so here's the transition. Dallas Alley, which used to be this club, they had like 7 different clubs for $5 cover, 7 different formats, and they for a while, for about 3 times they did the Hawaiian Tropic Bikini Contest, and they filmed it twice, and the 3rd time the DJ didn't show up, and I had a crate of music in the back of my car from doing some other gigs, and I ran up to the DJ booth, and they all had a good time, and I was able to go from being the guy who rained on everybody's parade when they didn't have their ID or when they were trying to get in on a fake ID, to the guy controlling the crowd, which meant instead of showing up at 6 o'clock, I could show up at 8:45, and instead of working till 3 or 4 in the morning on security, I could get out around 2:15, and the money was the same. So 4 hours of work, and it was better quality work, and you got to be the guy that was helping everybody have fun versus the guy that was raining on everybody's parade, or
Yeah, as soon
having
as you said bouncing, I'm like, Roadhouse, the double dues.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was Dallas Alley back in the day. This was not Deep Ellum. No closed fist. It was only restraints. If you wanted to see somebody get roadhoused, you go to Club Clearview down on Deep Ellum back in the day, and the guys with their Doc Martens would put a beating on folks. And no, because Dallas West End was very touristy, and so it was very conservative, and very much restrained. No closed fist, no punching, and you try not to get popped by the guy. I had a friend of mine that was working, and it's funny because he was a 2nd degree black belt, and the guy sucker punched him and blacked his eye really bad, and so everybody just gave him grief because he had really long hair, and people would call him Steven Seagal at the time, and just to get sucker punched, they gave him a little bit of fits about his black belt lifestyle, and because one of the deals that as he was moving up the ranks, his instructor had to go to because Larry was to the point he was breaking like 9 bricks with his ankle, with his heel. And so his instructor started breaking bricks with his head. And so that was what Larry decided he was going to do, is start breaking bricks with his head. Now, it's always kind of entertaining when they have bricks and they don't get the wood pins right, because they might hit it 4 or 5 times before they break the brick. And you go, God bless you. Enjoy your brick, man.
Right. I don't
But,
see.
yeah.
Hey, what was the worst fake ID you ever saw?
Oh, Texas OU weekend, man. Texas OU weekend, you could flip it around and say not official government document on it. And so the red behind the date was a different color. And on Texas OU weekend, they paid me $25 for every fake ID I could pick up. And I could
Really?
pick up fake IDs on Texas OU weekend. And I remember being at the door at this one place, and this girl, she's like, no, it's a real ID. And we go, well, fine, I'm going to hand it off to the officers. And, if you think it's a real ID, they're going to, and if not, you're going to, because of course I would, if I get it, I get $25 and I go, it's illegal. But if you want to argue about it, here's the officers, I'll give it back to you. And they're going to take you to jail. And she's like, but I just got it in town. I just paid $250 for it. And the officer's like, well, do you want to go to jail or you want to give it up?
So you can go to jail for that in Texas?
Fake IDs. I mean,
I would guess everywhere.
Well,
Yeah.
not in Mexico. But
I don't think in New York City back then either, or New York City now for that moment.
It'd be like having a fake passport and going through customs. I mean, maybe not as that strict, because I mean it's just a club. But if it gets to the point an officer comes back and you give them something fake, they're gonna give you a ride in the back of the car, or actually get you to fess up. And so she fessed up, and she was so horrified that, man, she had bought that half an hour earlier for $250 so she could go in the club Texas OU, where she could have just sat out on the patio and had just a fine time, and not given up her $250 and her fake ID.
Why was it called Texas OU?
University of Texas, University of Oklahoma. So it's called the Red River Rivalry, and it's held usually during the Texas State Fair. And it is one of the loudest, rowdiest, competitive games that you'll have. And so at the West End, because it was a tourist area, you'd have a band out front. They had a big plaza. And so at midnight, you'd get 10, 15,000 people in the plaza, and they would do a pep rally. But that also used to be one of the times, because Dallas used to have open container laws twice a year. One would be for Texas OU weekend, and the second one is still happening, and that's St. Patrick's Day. So if you want to, so St. Patrick's Day, if you go down Greenville and see people with a grocery cart and a cooler around 6 or 7 a.m., it's full of beer and Jello shots or booze. And so you can walk around and, but Texas OU, it got so rowdy one year that a bunch of fights broke out, and a couple people got shot down by the bus station. But that's the bus station in Dallas. They shouldn't have been there anyway. But
where's the bus? I don't even recall ever going by the bus.
The bus station is on.
There's a Greyhound in downtown.
Yeah, it's at Commerce, just past Earl Cable. There's a McDonald's there, and it's about a block away from Earl Cable, and it's sketchy.
Okay, is it technically South Dallas?
No, it's right there in downtown Dallas.
Wow.
But you got like the people who will prey, the predators that'll try to pick up on the girls who come into town on the Greyhound, and it's just like there's some pimps and crazy. I mean, it's like the very worst of the worst. You go down there, it's like, wow, this is just something else.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about bus terminals, but the one in Manhattan does not have a great rep either.
I don't think any bus terminal is going to have a good one.
Yeah.
Well, the one in Mexico City, I make your hair stand up, driving around there.
I get afraid driving by it.
Well, that's where Spirit goes on the other side of downtown where they have the big circle where the train lets off, and they don't have a terminal. You just walk up and you got your
But
ticket.
you mean the DART, right?
No, not
The
Megabus.
Metro.
Megabus.
Pardon?
Megabus. It's a competitor with Greyhound, but they don't stop at every little town. So, like, if you wanted to go from here to Nashville, they'll get there in like 7 hours. And if you make your reservation like a month ahead of time, it's like $35.
Hey, are they the ones that do the Dallas to Houston?
Yeah,
Dallas?
that was
They
Houston.
do.
Austin.
There's also an
Okay.
executive one, Dallas to Houston.
Maybe I'm confusing it with the executive one. Yeah. Because I drove down to Houston the last time and then heard how cheap the executive bus was. Like, I spent more on that on gas. I mean, obviously.
No,
right?
then that was the megabus. The executive is like $100, 120.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I've got a friend that she lives north of Austin, and she's got a mega bus stop somewhere over by her, and it's like same day, it's like $20 or $15 one way.
Yeah,
Wow.
megabus
They-
is
she-
not bad.
it's like
The
2.5
executive, Valtine or something like that it is. And it was, when I was going down to Houston all that much, I looked at it once because my car broke down, so I had to take the bus back, and it was like 150, and it was sold out, and I ended up taking the Greyhound. That's why I know where the bus station is.
Well, and the hard thing about Greyhound is it stops every 15 to 20 minutes, every little town. Because when
Yeah.
I
So
was-
basically, it's a local bus trying to cross Texas? That's insane.
Well, it actually crosses Texas, yes. Just takes
Hey,
you
I-
a while.
I rode a Greyhound all the way up to northern Kansas one time.
On a bet?
It was like a day and a half up there and a day and a half back to meet with a coach that was going to give me a partial scholarship to
All right.
one of the brethren colleges that was up there, the Threshers, and I go, I've played Division I ball, and I've had a good time, but it's time to get a job and time to get working.
Wow. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about what's coming up ahead. So we've talked a little bit about your history and where you came from, even where your last name came from. But
Sure.
so dealing with the IRS and all that stuff, what's your typical client? Is it just individuals, small, mid-sized companies? It's a mix.
It runs from individual, primarily more self-employed, to small businesses. I think our cap has been around 15 to 20 million gross revenues. And, and that stunned me because he was running a $20 million company a year on a Schedule C, which is just absurd. That's paying a whole lot more tax than he had to.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. Furniture company, God bless him. But, it's a lot of people, they don't teach people how to start up a business. And I get people all the time that they've been running a Schedule C where they're netting 100K, 200K, 300K on a Schedule C. And they're like, well, why should I incorporate? And I'm going, you'll save a whole lot of taxes. And, the company can start picking up a lot of expenses. You can put yourself on a reasonable income. You can then take a draw so you're not subjected to, which is subject to income tax, but the draw is not subject to Social Security and Medicare. Then your health insurance could be picked up in some circumstances, company car, a lot of these different things that right now will come out of your own pocket, end up the company can pick up and take care of your family. And then so your income may not necessarily go up, but what income you do have is going to become disposable income versus allocated toward these things that the company's picking up. So, there's just a lot of different things to, and we try to help facilitate that transition. Do they want to be an LLC, and are they going to be a flow-through entity? And we try to help facilitate that and start, with a little education of, because the difficulty I have with a lot of folks is they've come in. It's not unusual that they're a couple years behind in filing their returns. They're self-employed. They haven't made any estimated payments. and we just have to get them onto this. Hey, here's what you got to do to stop digging the hole, because if you don't stop digging the hole, this thing's going to follow you through the end of time.
Right.
And the discipline has to be stop digging the hole on the front end, and then secondary is get you compliant, and then get some terms on that back end stuff so that you're not vulnerable to IRS coming and hitting your bank account or hitting your accounts receivables, people who owe you money, and or having liens filed, which that doesn't necessarily help. And you know, uh, and it's just trying to educate people, get them squared up, get them compliant, help feed them knowledge if they're willing to do that. That's one of the interesting things I was referencing before is people who have a IRS collection issue tend to, within 5 years, fall out of that, compliance. And so what we try to do is watch their back, try to communicate with them. And then, going forward this year with COVID and everything, is just implementing new technology, trying to streamline things, trying to improve communication. Because one of the hard things with representation that I've had is the IRS has been gone, or they're tough to, it's hard to get a hold of somebody. And just being able to tell somebody, hey, I called on your case, I got a quick response, there's been no activity, but at least they have some peace of mind that, something's taken care of.
Right.
And that's where automation can kick in. And that's where, we've input a portal so people can upload their data and we can collaborate through their project. Whenever we put something up there, it'll email them or eventually it'll text them, say, hey, you've got an activity item here. When they send us something, it'll do the same to us. But that way they can see everything and see the processes. We can make notes back and forth. And, and then the other deal is once the returns get done, if they're trying to buy a house or something like that, instead of calling us and go, hey, go dig out a copy of my return and fax it over to me, they can go into the portal and they can share it with and then send it to their, their lender or, their broker or whoever, so they can either get pre-qualified or keep that process rolling. And it's just trying to streamline and increase customer service, increase customer experience. It's there's things that I've seen with the industry that can be better, and just putting some technology into place can streamline things for us and give us more capacity to be more efficient with our workloads and a little more capacity to handle more clients.
Okay. So on the high end, you said 10, 15 million. What's the low end that you would say you normally have self-employed? 100, 150?
It really varies. One of the things is, what's crazy is the people who make a lot of money don't always appreciate the work that's done.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I had a friend of mine that I went to school with, and he goes to church at TD Jakes Church, and he says, man, there was an altar call the other day, and this little African American lady goes, God bless the Schlichting group, they help me take care of my taxes. And that's one of the things, as I get people who come in who've talked to a competitor here local and have been given an outrageous number. I had a guy come in that he owed $7,000. He could do a streamline, set it up for 60 months without a lot of hoops, and the guy quoted him $3,500. And it's and it's like, let's get a power of attorney. We can get on the phone, and it can really be set up. It's maybe a $500 project. Typically it's going to be about $350 to $500. But that sets it up, confirms it, makes sure it's in place, and then also leaves the power of attorney in place so to make sure they're making the payments. And if they miss something and something comes out, try to patch it up and keep them on moving in the right direction down the road. But there's marketing for these attorneys, and the hard part is what I am as I'm an enrolled agent, which means I've got a license from the Treasury Department to represent people before the IRS, and that enrolled agent's license designation predates the bar and predates the CPA designation. It goes back to I believe 1847 or the end of the Civil War, when they needed people to work with reparations for the farmers, for animals and things that the soldiers had used during the Civil War, was the creation of the enrolled agents. Now, currently, there's about 50,000 of us. And there was an article from the National Association of Enrolled Agents saying that nearly 75% of the enrolled agents are in their mid-70s right now. And there's not that next generation. And the hard part is the work we do is complicated and convoluted work. I can't take a kid who's got an accounting degree or CPA degree who's out of college and be able to apply their skills to what we've got, because it's a whole nother level. They have the minimum skills to do what they do, but we work with unorthodox systems and have to come up with deductive reasoning, creative situations to try to make it fit in the box and to get things straight. And they're used to, hey, if it fits in the box, that's what they're trained to do. But the hard thing, especially with education these days, there's only one way, and they don't tell you, go, here's a box of Legos, how do you put it together to make it fit? And that's just part of the educational challenge these days, is kids aren't taught deductive reasoning. And I've tried to hire people in the past, and they'll run into something that's they don't know how to deal with, and they'll just stare at it. And we grew up in a time, if there's a wall in front of you and you need to get to the other side, you go around it, you go over it, you go under it, you go through it, you figure it out. But that's not something that is ingrained or taught into kids into that type of thinking these days. Mm-hmm. And and it's just part of the world of specialization too. We live in a day of instant gratification with Amazon, stuff that can be here same day. So if something breaks, why do you need to try to fix it? Why, and you have stuff, just throw it out and get another one. Where you've got people who live out in the suburbs and in the middle of nowhere, and they have to improvise because there's not a Walmart around and not an Amazon, and they're broken down on the side of the road and it's 20 miles. It's a different thought process. And, and that's one of the interesting things, is there's a growing movement of makers, of people who, revisualize, well, this can do that and that can do this, because it's a missing thing. And you're starting to see people who want to get off and homestead and off the grid and things like that, because it's a whole different thought process and mindset. But but we live in an age of specialization where and that's one of the challenges to what's going on in our culture and society right now, is you've got different thought processes, and they've had that access to, I want what I want right this second and I can get it. And my position, which I'm obviously not an elected official, but my platform would be that going forward at some point, where kids, when they turn 18 or they graduate high school, should do 2 years of some form of community service, be it the military or Peace Corps or public works, that they have to learn to live on their own. They have to learn to handle their money. And just a 2-year window, and even going overseas, to understand that, there's 18-year-olds out there fighting over their parents because their parents got them the glacier water or Poland Springs versus a Voss water. So let's go dig a well in Mexico or Africa that's got poisoned water that these people are going to walk 4 or 5 miles to, put it in a vase, take it home, boil it, just to have that glass of water that they know that they can drink that won't kill them. And it opens your eyes to going, how incredibly blessed and gifted they are to be able to live in where we're at. That everything is immediate. I want this, and a couple years on their own, trying to trying to figure out that their money only goes so far, that if they blow all their money on a date, they got to eat at the chow in the chow line
Right.
with the rest of the enlisted guys, you know. But there's camaraderie that's built out of that, you know, but it also goes, you know, they just expect, there's so much expectation that the world owes them something.
Mhm.
And, you know,
Entitlement is big nowadays.
one of the parallels I talk about is if we look at some stereotypes that have been in movies through just the last 20, 30 years of an Indian person. You know, they started out as cab drivers, and then they became convenience store owners and hotel owners. And now you look on TV and they're engineers and doctors, and they've done that in 2 to 3 generations. Now that's something to be proud of, because they've been able to move that stereotype, and they've done that all within their own culture and all their own family working together. And you see that in different cultures, but the American culture has not continued that progress, you know. And that's one of the difficult things that I've also seen as dealing with train wrecks is parents who are very sophisticated with their finances, be it trusts, be it you know, just how they handle their money, and they don't pass that knowledge on to their kids. And you know, that's where, especially since Reagan, there's been great opportunities for families to be able to build wealth and establish wealth and to be financially secure. But if you don't take advantage of it, you know, it's not going to happen. You know, because in the old day, you know, back up until I think the mid 90s, when you owned a house, when you sold it, you either rolled all of that profit into the next house, or you had to pay tax on it. And you know, and then you had that one-time lifetime exclusion on that last house that you could keep the profits out of it, and they did away with that. And that's where, you know, it helped drive the housing boom, where as long as you spend 2 out of 5 years as a principal residence, you can exempt $250K profit for an individual, or $500K for a married filing joint of profit. And I had one of our staff that's now retired, about 20 years ago, and met with those 2 doctors that were married to each other and explained that. And they go, so you're telling me every 2 years we could make up to $500,000 tax free, as long as we bought a house, lived in it 2 years and fixed it up, and were able to sell it to make $500K. He's like, yeah, which is really unorthodox, but they did that for 15 years and put that money away. While you know, that's a tough lifestyle, because you're always living in a construction zone for the most part.
Right.
But you know, if they maximize that, well, you know, that's a lot of money to be put away that's tax free.
Yeah, it's real
And
money.
it's unorthodox. You know, one of my favorite books that I read really young was a book called Die Broke, and I forget the author's name. And his deal was, you know, and he was a financial planner. And what he wrote it probably 10, 15 years ago, with all these people who were starting to inherit these large sums of money, was that it destroyed the family makeup and the family unity. And he says, you know, because if you go back, even just, let's go 3, 4 generations, you didn't have inheritance. It was a nice piece of jewelry. It was a nice piece of furniture. It wasn't $500,000 or $1 million. And his deal was, try to help your kids out so they're not in debt. Help them try to pay for college so they don't have student loans. Help them if they need a car for work. Try to get them into a home earlier, help them with a down payment, and let them know that that's their inheritance. But if they don't have that leveraged debt, they also have the discipline to understand that they're building equity, and they have a greater opportunity and really a true freedom of debt, because they can use whatever that disposable income is to make more money. And that's one of the things in this day and age. So many people have never experienced the concept of being debt free, and that's where, when I got into technology, I worked for an Indian gentleman, and he says, his name was Sashi, and he says, you don't buy anything, including cars or homes, if you can't pay cash for it. And, you know, that's an overwhelming concept. But if you can do that, then you're not worried about, oh man, I made 5 or 10% of the market, because you're going to be mad if you only make 5 or 10% when you see opportunity. If you got cash in hand, you're going to be doing deals where you're flipping it and you're doubling your money. If you're an entrepreneur looking for deals, 5 and 10%, you're going to be mad about. But it also gives you the freedom to, it really helped me, discipline me, because I guess before I got married and divorced, I was at that point, and it really helped launch me to another level of being without having that additional debt. You know, my house and car were paid for, and I was able to, electronics before the technology bubble burst. I was doing computer hardware, and those were fun days, and it was kind of frontier days. And I've told Andrew about it, that there used to be downtown Dallas, it used to be called First Saturday. And for a long time, it was considered the world's largest computer flea market. But it started out as ham radio swap meet down in basically the late 60s. But, coming into the 80s and 90s, and as all that stuff grew, you had people from all over the U.S. that would come down here to use one of those parking spaces, and sell, pools. And because for a long time, when computers were updated, the tech got to keep the pools, which was memory and cards and all that other stuff. And people would drive down with van loads and truckloads. And in the heyday, you could build a computer for half the price of one that you bought one off the shelf.
Right.
And so that's before all these places had server rooms. And so it was really, the incredible thing is when you see a team come down and they'd be wearing the headsets, walkie-talkie headsets, and they'd have that Halliburton case, and they'd have $1 million, $2 million cash, because they can, they had the guys to put it together, and it was going to be half the price of buying something off the shelf. And generally it was going to be better than what they could get off the shelf. And those were some heady times, but that's back when,
That's
a 30-pin, 1 meg stick of 30-pin memory was going for $43. That was $5 cheaper than anybody else out there. 1 meg of memory now. And so now you're buying terabytes for $20. It's a different day and age, and technology has got us.
Yeah. Steve, how can people reach you?
My website is SlickTax.com. You can come through there. Look us up on the internet. I'm on Facebook under the Schlichting group, or SlickTax.com. I'm on LinkedIn. You can simply call us at 972-385-8182. We'll be more than happy to set up a free consultation to review your situation and to lay out what options are available for you, and see, you're the one who drives the bus. We're the ones who, you decide which way you want to go, and we'll get you to the other side of that.
Awesome.
Cool. We'll definitely tag you on Facebook as well, so that at least that way you'll appear up there. And we've had a blast, man. I imagine that we actually went long. We went
every tech seminar should be like this.
A little long-winded sometimes.
That's fine. We'll continue this off the air. It's Thursday, right, Andrew?
This Thursday in Plano. Yeah.
Okay. So,
5:30.
Yeah, we're at
so.
The
what Pacific
Lima
Thursday in
Taverna.
Plano, where?
At
Okay.
Lima Taverna, the restaurant.
Okay.
That's also on Facebook, and Steve, I'll send you an email as well.
Okay, is that the one that's off Plano Parkway, back behind the mall there?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's that one. It's sort of become our standard Peruvian place. It's my best Peruvian place.
It's not the.
All right, sir. Well, thank you guys for being here. Emilio Garcia with Success Paradigms, and my co-host, Mr. Andrew Barker and Mr. Steve Schlichting. Very nice to have had you here.
Steve.
We'll have to have you again. and keep on talking about more traditions on flea markets and stuff like that. That was very interesting.
Hey, like I said, I'm an entrepreneur. I've always tried to.
I used to do the same thing, but take them down to Mexico back in the day for the company. So I know
Wow.
what you're talking about.
That's how I used to do Christmas, because my folks would go up to Rodoso, New Mexico, and I would drive down and have somebody drive. You could pick up somebody who would drive you down through Juarez and go through the market and a couple other places, so I could pick up a bottle. And I did all my Christmas shopping in Juarez back in the day.
That's gonna
Man,
happen.
this is awesome, guys. We'll see each other on Thursday then.
All righty,
All right, we'll see
guys. Have a good one.
Bye now. Thank you.